Hello, my name is Humberto Nicolini, and I'm going to talk about the importance of diversity under psychiatric genetic research using underrepresented populations. Genomic is failing on diversity. In this study by 2009, 96 of the participants in the GWAS studies were from European descent. And later, by 2016, there was an increase in different populations, but mainly by Asian populations by 20%, but still is a lack of other populations like Latin Americans or African populations. As an example, 25% of the variants in the Europeans populations that were found in the genomic in the GWAS studies have been identified as being associated with the BMI or type 2 diabetes or lipid levels in different populations, and at least 1 out of 5 populations are found in non-European descent. Also, the cytochrome 2D6 gene occur at different frequencies in different populations. This is the example of how this has been changed, and as you can see in the line bars, there is still a very low representation of several different populations, except by the Asian population by 2016. And in a more recent study from last year, this is in the GWAS in the psychiatric disorders, still there is a very low representation in several populations, except by bipolar disorder, which there is a very low representation of African descent, and in PTSD that there is a very tiny representation of Latin American population. And as you can see, most of the data that we're studying are mainly coming from European ancestry studies. In this graph, I'm just showing a map that everybody knows from the American continent, and most of the studies come from either the United States or Canada, but in the Latin American rest of the continent, there is very few studies, but there is a wide variety of different ethnicities represented in this study that we did that several years ago, and there is a lot of different ethnicities that might be represented here with and that might show some impact in the variation of the SNPs that might affect the psychiatric genetic genes. In this graph, still 78% of the GWAS studies in psychiatric genetics were from European, very low percent from Asian, and very few are still from the Hispanic population. This is 8% of the population worldwide is Latin American population, and 19% of the Latin American population is part of the U.S. population, but less of the 1% of the Latin American population represented in the GWAS studies, and 70% of the Latin American population is from Mexican American descent. And in Mexico, 21% of the Latin American population is mixed also with the indigenous population, and 7% of the population is still from isolated indigenous populations. So that shows how important is to increase the representation of different ethnicities, non-European population in the psychiatric genetics study. And we need to do much more research in this part of using different ethnicities all along the world. Thank you very much.